I am Yuma Mudra, and I am going to offer a serial of videos alone and also with other people in English about Danza Duende Network. We want to create a structure of explanations about the philosophic and also about technical details of this project and of exercises, and regarding also many people who are part of the network and who are exploring this work on their own right. So I really invite all people to join in, maybe because you are interested to know about this work, maybe because you believe you could offer something to make this structure become more and more presentable and more available, because this is completely based on benevolent work, benevolent offerings, because we believe that it is very necessary nowadays to create means for people to enter deeply into their richness, their personal richness. And we also believe that working with your health, with the means of body, speech, and mind, and creating more and more network of people who are able to join together with a motivation which is free from gain and free from fear of losing money or having more money, but really completely concentrated on the love for art and the love also for human qualities of taking care of the world, of taking care of life, of taking care of ourselves as being protectors of all beings, instead of maybe abusing from resources and abusing from animals, exactly the opposite. So this project has been created by myself in 2004. Since a few years I am in a permanent half retreat, so I'm mostly retired, but also communicating with the teachers and all the people that have been making this network exist. So now we are doing it in English, because maybe English is the language that more people can understand and share. But we will translate slowly all the videos, and then we will create also paperwork, books, and different materials that will come from this purpose of generating a structure of explanations by little videos on YouTube. So please come on YouTube to see these videos. It is Raji Mudra, and it is called #Masterclass Yuma. See you there. I hope you have a good, wonderful day. I believe this is the number 11. I hope I'm not mistaken. So it's A11. So just to record a little bit, we have 3 classes of master classes are being gathered on YouTube. So the first A is about the philosophics and the structure of the project Danza Duende Network, including both together the network itself and the tools that are used in the network and the way they are organized, and also in the same time quite free in the sense of being useful in different kinds of these situations and also orders. And the section B is more about practice. So it is not yet, there's only one B so far. It's the description of an exercise that is called the angels that robe thieves of movement, which is an exercise I created. And I probably will come back to that one, because there's a lot of things interesting to work on about that exercise. And the section C is more other people working in master classes in the Danza Duende Network which could be a lot of different people. And so far, there's one interview that was done in Brazil by Zoom to Negra, who was in Barcelona in Spain, Europe, and that one is in Portuguese. But hopefully, slowly we get the subtitles everywhere so that people can see in a lot of languages. So thank you very much. I decided to give this one as a podcast, so I'm not filming myself, because it helps me also maybe to concentrate really on the topic itself and not put much energy in the visual aspect while I'm talking. So this is a very important video, because now I'm going to a little bit make a commentary about what we have been doing so far, and I'm going to jump into the mandala of the 5 wisdoms, which is also in the same time the work of chaos and order, order and chaos. And I'm going to create a relationship between the cycle of the dragon, the cycle of the 5 wisdoms, and the cycle of mysteries, in the sense of understanding why somehow they are always together, all the 3 of them. But of course, in the workshops or in the study in the university, we focus more on one aspect and on another aspect. So to make a recap about what we have been doing, I have been explaining what is danza, what is the idea of duende, why it's called Danza Duende. I have been talking about freedom as a perspective of how we perceive as human beings, and everything is about perceptions in this perspective of dance. The dance as a way to work on perceptions. So that's why Haji and myself, we call it sensorium. You're working on your senses. And here what is very peculiar is that we don't only work on the aspect of manifesting form as a dance, but also working on the fact that we come back to the source of perceptions itself in the same time we dance. So you come back to your mind. It's like in the same time you are dancing, and in the same time you got trained to look at your mind in the same time you're dancing. So I was talking about the freedom is a perspective of time and space as not separated, which is actually scientifically already acknowledged as a human kind of perception of science, no? And in this perspective, there is something in art about freedom that is very important, which is not so much the concept of freedom, but more the acknowledgement of something in our soul, in our being, in our consciousness, which is not beginning, not ending, and not formal, and not sound, and not color, not a thing, not a concept, not an emotion. Nothing we could design, but this source is something that is infinitely alive and that we feel, and that is extremely sharp and bright and intelligent. So this is exactly what freedom means in this case, and it means that in the Danza Duende Network, this aspect of freedom, and so what I mean is that the never losing track of this aspect for the teachers, specifically for the teachers, is really important. So even if you're working very hard on rigor and discipline and form and maybe even symmetry, whatever, in the same time you have something that is not form, not beginning, not ending, not something. even if you are creating some kind of a discussion about emotion or about expression or about art, whatever it is, or even if you have an opinion, it's okay. No problem with opinions, but they always come together with this paradox of no opinion at all is a thing. So it kind of dissolves, no, in this big freedom. So this gives a possibility of a very, very open mind. Even a problem with somebody in the midst of creating a show or of making a production, whatever it is, what we call working in interaction between people, the patience and the quality of virtue that is part of the training, it comes from there. It comes from the capacity to see and to train into seeing that in the same time you are doing something important, you are giving a lot of value to whatever it is you're doing it the best you can, and in the same time you know somewhere in yourself it can be free and dissolve into something that is beyond the duality of getting annoyed, for example. So that gives you patience. So it allows you to be quite resistant to conflict. You could get into a conflict, but you could immediately jump back into this space of freedom and immediately let this problem that appeared, this suffering, this conflict, this friction, become a wisdom path, a path for wisdom. So this is part of the training, and it's part of the training also in the midst of creating art. So you can do art with this perspective of using whatever comes up in the same time as a dual manifestation and in the same time as something that is giving you another perspective that goes beyond, but also comes from beyond. So it doesn't really go somewhere or come from somewhere. So this is where it's difficult to express, because it is so intuitive. It is so very, very simple and deep that you cannot really express it. But this is the freedom. And of course the other one is what we were talking about, the discipline, the form. So the form about rhythm, the precision, the form about geometric perspective, the geometric that could be symmetric or not symmetric, and the forces of duality, like right and left, standing up, laying down, turning right, turning left, the feet, how you use your hips in relationship with weight of the right feet, the left feet, all this. And so actually this relationship between form and non-form is what gives you the sense of virtue, because in this case virtue is how the human quality becomes something that is healthy, because that same quality could become extreme and not healthy. So it's very easy to understand actually, because whatever virtue we're talking about, if it has too much discipline, rigor and form and no freedom, no openness, it will become narrow-minded or stiff. And on the other hand, if you are all open-minded, but you have no precision and no awareness into the relativeness of duality of people and the body and the material and the things, it's very difficult for you to relate, to situations and to be something else than simply spaced out. So the virtue is that the qualities revealed by this balance in this paradoxal awareness that grows as a training. So in the same time to perceive space-time beyond measurement and beyond even the duality between space and time, and also exactly in the same time the opposite, the precision of space, the precision of time, and the precision of bodies and form into emptiness. And so this gives rise to the possibility of qualities, and of course of empathic, and even more than empathy, I would say a kind of skill, growing skill, to react spontaneously, properly, for the good of all beings. So this is, of course, it's dance, it looks like pure Buddhism, but actually it is really applied to dance, and through dance, as dance is movement, anything we do. So it could be whatever we do. May that be a profession, may that be recognized as art, or may that be something else that we do. It's useful for all. So these master classes have been describing this, and then I entered into the cycle of the dragon. So I want to remind everybody that these are master classes that are directed mainly to people who are already trained. But it can be useful for people who are starting training, or it can be useful for these people who are trained when they are training others. So of course, when the perspective I'm explaining is the perspective of a person who is organizing workshops or organizing retreats or organizing production festivals. All these, we are going to call them concept, but I really want to always remind you that we are working on something that is not conceptual, and we are using the concept to express ourselves, as I'm using English. So I'm expressing in English something that is not a word, it's really a fact. So it's the same thing here. These concepts are only to design certain experiences and some means and tricks that could be useful. But the deepness of this work is experiential, so it doesn't respond to any kind of category or any kind of design. It can take many forms, and the form it has nowadays could change. But the core of what I'm talking about is not to be changed, because it's very important. That's why I'm doing these videos, actually. So that nobody can, can miss this importance of the work on non-duality in the whole frame of training. So the cycle of the dragon, we've been explaining a little bit, the transformation of suffering, and in my case it was very important in my life, because as I did my own dance of the suffering, I did understand afterwards that this was revealing to me something about myself that I did never really acknowledge. So at that time I was already a Buddhist, and Buddhism is based on understanding the suffering, so that we could renounce and let go of creating causes or being hooked and craving into the causes of suffering. So this is what all Buddhist schools are about. And I myself was quite already trained, and I did these dances, this show, because I really expert, if you like, into improvisation. And my technique to create improvisation was really my own. Nobody taught me how to do that. It came because I quitted classical dance suddenly and got into Buddhist retreats. And in these retreats, I started to dance again, but I could not dance classical dance. I had to reconstruct everything. And as I was looking at myself by the practice, I reconstructed my way of improvisation through the Dharma practice itself. So it was always a way for me to make of the dance itself a practice, and it was not culturally related to a country or to a social caste or something like that. Like very often if people do Buddhist dance, they're going to say it's Chinese or it's Tibetan or maybe it's Indian. But in my case, it was none of these. It was really related only to myself. And in a very universal way, but of course to myself with my own story of movement, of dance, of knowledge into martial arts and several type of dances. But also as a woman. But anyway, in the midst of all this path, I discovered lots of things, and I discovered things about myself, but then I discovered things that were actually universal. And this is, the Danza Duende is like the result of all of this. And the suffering that I discovered when I did the suffering dance was that there was something about my behavior and my usual behavior in life that was revealed by the dance, and that I didn't really understand before doing that dance, and that could be released thanks to that dance. And so the whole process was very interesting, because the cycle of the dragon is, the whole process is this dance of the suffering is being prepared. So all the beginning is to prepare that, and that moment of the dance of the suffering is like the highest point of the mountain or the deepest point underneath the earth, as you like, both in the same time. And then all the way out of the workshop or the retreat is how you go from that suffering towards a kind of alchemic process of transforming that, without giving recipes, because it has to come out of the guts of each one, and not to be something that people are trying to reproduce an idea of how I should do that or how I should be. It actually happens. So there's a lot of things that happens in the cycle of the dragon, that the situation is proper for that to happen, but it doesn't happen because we tell people to do it. I'll give you a little example. When we end the dance of the suffering and we get into a part that is the theater, like a little bit more a theater of the magic space, which was inspired from Mudra space awareness created by Trungpa Rinpoche, and also that I learned with, I suddenly forgot her name. Well, I will probably remember later, but anyway, she is a great, great lady. I love her. She's very good, and she is the lady who used to teach theater and Mudra space awareness. She still does teach. Maybe I will remember her name as I'm talking. But anyway, this is inspired of, it's not exactly the same exercise, but it was inspired from there. And actually people, because they did live all these days of experiences, very often they become funny, but nobody asked them to become funny. Nobody ever said that we should be funny, and the funny things come up, and that's very, very, very amazing, because it's like if the clown, there's no clown at all. I don't know anything about the clown, and the clown, people get their clown out of them. So it's really a very important aspect of transforming suffering, is the natural human instinct, intuition, of making it not funny, not the sense that you're making fun of what you suffered, but it's the sense more of feeling inside of you, there's somebody inside of you that is going beyond, and that's why you're able to laugh. And that's really important. It's like if there was more space and more breath inside of the tense feeling of suffering, of drama. So this is an aspect that I just give an example now, because I don't want to reveal too many secrets about how it is organized, but this is very important, and it's an example of an organic process that you give the means for that to happen, but you're not telling people to do it. And that is also a lot what I call creating camps of wisdom. So the creating camps of wisdom is a container in which people are quite free, but they have structure in there. But the less possible, we tell them how to think. Even very often I do the more I can, the best I can, so that we only talk when everything is finished. Even to say who I am, who she is, who he is, we try to let it at the end, because it's very interesting, this virgin approach. But it's not comfortable, so this is the whole thing. No? If you're a teacher, this is where it's so difficult. it's first that you can remain in that space, because it's very difficult nowadays for people not to label and not to conceptualize and not to do all these seduction things that people do in order to have lots of clients. It's very difficult not to stick to that or to get drained into that attitude. But it's important in the sense of Danza Duende. It's important. The teacher should be genuine, and it's very important that the situation, the teacher is. I call him a teacher. I don't call him something else or her, because it is a teaching. It's like creating a transmission, because whoever is creating that situation has to know what she or he is doing. So even if she or he is not directing how people think and is not teaching everything about what is there, that person knows and is transmitting that by means of presence or by means of symbol. Okay? So it is teaching. So that person really needs to, as much as possible, not project hope on the situation and the people, and not to project fear on also the people and the purpose and the result. And that is also not easy, but that's part. That's part. So all that to say that Danza Duende is not easy, and it was never designed to be something easy. It was always, I always knew it was a difficult project. And anyway, that's why it exists. That's why it was done. It was done to be a very deep and elaborated and sophisticated path for artists to free themselves from the mundane aspect of art, and to go back to something that is very, very unlabeled and impossible to define, and that is changing all the time, but is in relationship with the source, which that is not maybe changing that much. It is, the source is a place that has no form, as we already said. No color, no time, it's so that give me an example like Dharma art. Like if you take the art of brush with the Chinese brush, for example, or Japanese brush, the person is going to meditate and to spend a long time on meditation or a long time on a koan, which is a poetry that creates some kind of paradoxal question in your mind. And maybe it's going to take 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, maybe it takes you 20 years, maybe it takes you 5 minutes, and something comes out of you. That first thought, best thought comes out, and that one is the expression of that koan as the resolution of that koan. So that's an example of how art is not, in this case, completely cultural or traditional. So it is traditional, what I told you in Japan or in China, but there is something in this way of doing things that is completely appropriate for people on earth, wherever they are. It does not have to be Chinese or Japanese. It is intemporal. Okay, it is an intemporal attitude. So I'm coming back to this cycle of the dragon. The suffering is a way, when you see yourself in the causes of suffering, it is a way to create an alchemy, and this alchemy brings you somewhere. So the first difficult point is how could you avoid, if it's possible, first, how can you avoid not to get caught into the seduction of madness and suffering? How could you not be seduced by the intensity as an artist or as somebody who likes art, the intensity of passion that goes towards drama in the sense of madness, because that place is a very, very good place to create art. And it has a lot of seduction. And even the, how would I call it? All the aspect of demons and of hardship and even of ugliness and even of horror are seductive and are very fertile for creativity. So how could you not get seduced by that? Neither get seduced by this angel kind of rainbow-like me and you. So how can you just remain in a space that doesn't get seduced by any of these, but in the same time you could adore all of these. It's no problem. So I'm not saying that you are indifferent. I'm saying that you're cultivating an attitude of openness. So it's like if you're always coming back to this zero, basic, not conceptual perspective. But it's not indifference. The opposite, it's engagement, fully engaged and always coming back to the base. So each movement is a first thought, best thought, and each repetition of the movement has to also become a way of going back to the basic, being born, being dead, being born, being dead, inspiration, expiration. So the duality, the non-duality in Danza Duende is treated thanks to the duality. So we use duality of dance and duality of movement, the duality of your needs to handle how your movements, your weight, your body, your form, and the dynamic of what you're doing, how you can deal with all of these, and in the same time you really sharpen more and more a kind of intuition which is intelligent, which is very smart, but it is not intellectual. So it becomes very smart because you really step into something that actually is science. You're stepping into science, but it's not a science that you're studying. It's a science that you are yourself being. It's like if yourself looks at yourself, but you discover that you are not just yourself. So you discover that all about duality is there in your body, in how your body is how you say functionate, how the functions of your body. And you discover that as you get in more and more used to the functions of your body by the dual band, you really step into the third one. Like, for example, to make it more easy, if you really understand about your right leg and your left leg, you find the middle. So it's like if I had a third one. It's not really a third leg, actually. But it is, because it's not something. It's an invisible point, no? But that invisible point is mobile. It's not in a single place. But it is something that you start to feel thanks to the balance and the cooperation between the right and the left. But that cooperation comes thanks to the tension and actually sometimes even the opposition of the two legs. But it is the same thing about breath. Like if you are doing inspiration and expiration, expiration, inspiration, actually the real thing is about respiration. So the spiral restarts again. So it's like the waves, no? When actually you're never really expiration or inspiration. Actually, it's like the waves, no? When a wave goes, it's coming, and when a wave comes, it's going. So this is the same thing, and you're not studying that as an intellectual problem that you would try to solve and to explain and to write a book about it. No. You are experimenting this as your own intimate relationship with the universe at that moment. So this is why there's a sharp bright cleverness that starts to grow inside of you in relationship with everything in phenomena. And it's not, how would I say that? It's not that you are obsessed by philosophic or obsessed by science. It's just that inquisitiveness of your human condition starts to work, like the inquisitiveness you had since you were a young child, and maybe somehow you stopped because of life and what grown people don't let you be inquisitive because this moral things they have or whatever reason made these people not let the child be inquisitive. This inquisitiveness comes back because it's completely natural, and all animals have that, all people have that, but in human being it's very, very bright and very rich. Yes, rich. There's many aspects to this cleverness, and it's also at the end creative. The creativity comes from there. And so why am I saying that? It's because when you finish this dragon cycle and the suffering, and that the cycle is done, and that you didn't get caught, and you didn't get craving into drama, and you didn't get craving into earning money thanks to your intense drama, because you are so dramatic and you're so full of drugs and so pissed off all the time that you are so fascinating to everybody. And so that's a vicious circle. No, it leads you at one point maybe to become famous and rich sometimes, but probably something nasty will happen at one point because the intensity is never enough. No, so you have to reach a point where it's too much, and then that's when you get burnt or you burn somebody. Okay, so this is something that didn't happen. So you were able to go through all of this, and you reached a point where you don't need to perform your suffering anymore. And if you have to perform suffering, you can relate to the suffering of universal feelings of discomfort in relationship with the conditions of life and the material life. I mean material by having a body of flesh. So you could dance the suffering of an animal or the suffering of a being, or you could dance the suffering of some historical person, many things like that, but you didn't get caught in the seduction, the fascination of the whole process. May that be because of money or because of fame or because of yourself getting hooked into the pleasure of that. So you get into the cycle of the 5 wisdoms. So the first thing you're going to notice is that actually when you understand the mandala of the 5 elements, you understand that they have always been there. So it's nothing new. It's not like if you're suddenly discovering that there is water and that there is fire and there is earth and there is wind, and even that there is consciousness, because even people who don't believe in it, they cannot escape from the fact that they are full of consciousness. So, and nowadays even science is really getting more and more into the needs of consciousness. As I heard a scientist say not a long time ago, the science was kicked off. The consciousness was kicked off of science, but the consciousness came back by the window into science with the quantum physics. So you know this is normal. So you didn't maybe know about chaos and order, but you're going to notice, because you notice chaos and order into everything that we do, and you're going to notice, like even I don't know, you prepare a meal and it's going to be order, and then it becomes a chaos, and then you clean everything. So everything has this kind of pattern. But even music has this pattern, and even dance, like groups, everything has this kind of pattern. So you have a kind of a clue about chaos and order. So the work with the mandala is like how you have symmetric and you have a form, a symbolic form, and how this form can be completely open and become chaotic, and how somehow you can experience in the same time the co-emergency of the chaotic aspect and of the order aspect. So this is where it's very interesting. This is, of course, you can find this in the Mahamudra practices, specifically of the Kagyu lineages in the Tibetan Buddhism. But of course, again, the Mahamudra aspect is not something that they invented. They just, of course, created an extraordinary lineage and teachings, so to point out to something that is inherent, that exists really in our, in the way that we are conscious. How is our mind, the nature of our mind. So, of course, that in the nature of our mind, I'm going to give an example again, you could, in the same time, really starting to be aware of your suffering. Like, imagine I did my dance of the suffering. So I'm going to talk about me so that I give an example. And I see that in my suffering, actually something I didn't know, but my dance revealed that to me. I had this tendency, habitual tendency of aggression. Okay? Of course, there's always craving in aggression, but it expresses more as aggression. So as I get more into knowing myself, into knowing how things pop up in myself, I could get to a point that I can really feel and see the anger, and in the same time I could completely let this anger get free. And so as it gets free, and I don't invest in the purpose of that anger. So like if I'm angry at the tree, I'm telling you whatever because I have a tree in front of the door. I'm angry at the tree. So if I can relate to the anger and to the feeling of the anger, and usually it's physical, if I can bring back my awareness and my concentration to what I'm feeling and not labeling what I'm feeling, not creating any kind of projection about what I'm feeling, but relating to the dynamic of the energy, actually I can let the energy be free, and I don't even remember I'm angry at the tree anymore. So actually there's not going to be any kind of expression of anger because I came back to the energy. And it's exactly the same if I would talk to attachment in sexual energy. I can relate to the intensity of orgasm and sexual energy, or orgasmic, I would call it orgasmic energy, it's more precise. And I could really dive completely into the bliss of orgasmic energy, and in the same time free that energy, not free it, let it be, let it free. And so it means that actually I'm not even moving, and maybe I'm not even looking for any partner. Maybe I'm not even needing a partner at that moment. This is also completely present into tantric, the real tantra, the real lineages of tantra. I'm not talking about neo-tantra, I'm talking about genuine lineages of tantra, of Kashmir or Buddhism. And so you can, it's possible because it's part of something that is completely, actually it's completely nice to live like that. It's so nice. And it brings you back to a kind of childhood, because when you're a child you can get very angry and 5 seconds after you don't remember. So in this case you do remember, but you're not hooked, you're not fascinated, you're not driving into the energy. So for an artist this is great, because that's what you need. You need to get into all of these energy and to surf, like if you're surfing in the ocean. It's the ocean of emotions. It's not only your emotions, it's the whole emotions of everybody since ever and forever. So it's huge energy. And you need to surf in there, but not get seduced and caught into believing that that is me and that is you, and getting hooked into suffering again, back to the dragon. So the cycle of the dragon. So you're riding the dragon in this case. Huh? So what happens is that you are able to, in the same time, see order and chaos, which means that you can also see your very negative emotions or tendencies, and in the same time relax about them. And as you relax about them and they get released and they get free, and you don't relate to the object and subject effect, but you only relate to the subject, which is me. I have an emotion, but then I'm going to enter into the dynamic of the emotion as I feel the emotion, and not as I think. I don't have to think the emotion anymore, because it's when I think the emotion that I'm making it solid, and I'm making it something that is driving me into a kind of agenda. And that agenda is what can lead me to hell. Depends, huh? Can lead me to hell, or can lead me to a place where I feel I'm the best. So maybe it's not hell, because when you feel you're the best, you could be very powerful and successful, but you are fooling yourself around. You're not really in your true process of inquisitiveness. You're lying to yourself, so you think you're the best, you're the greatest, nobody is as great as yourself, so you become maybe very rich, very famous, maybe powerful, maybe, and then at one point something, one day or another, will bring you back to reality. And it can happen. I could give all the examples of the 5 wisdoms, but in this recording, I'm not going to give the different colors and directions, or that can come later. Now I want to take a basic look into how these 5 wisdoms are relating to a form that we give a shape, and this is how you can easily get into a kind of, it's like an in-between. The cycle of the mysteries, the next one, is really a place where it's like if you come back to the beginner's mind, but you're going to concentrate much more on really knowing your body and how to work with your body and your mind. It's going to become very, very direct into how is it you perform, no? Perform is going through the form, no? Inform and perform. So in the mysteries, it's like if the whole process of suffering that was in the cycle of the dragon, and riding the dragon, which was something you learn in chaos and order with the mandala of the 5 elements. So now you don't need that anymore. All of this is just not needed anymore. It's not needed. It's done. But it was very useful, because that's what's going to help you, not only yourself to be free, but it helps you also, because some people don't have such complicated emotion as others. So sometimes for them, if they like to teach, sometimes it's difficult for them to understand others. But the whole process of the dragon and the 5 wisdoms, it really helps also to develop slowly a kind of relationship with your intrication with everybody. So what do I mean? I mean that you get to a point when you get to the cycle of the mysteries that maybe you start to have naturally inside of yourself the connection with the intrication that exists among all living things. And this is beyond past, future, present. This is really the quantic discovering, but it's not only quantic, it always existed. That's what people can call telepathic, or they can call it prophetic, or they can call it the skillful master. How is it possible that that person knew exactly what you needed, no? But it's because that person doesn't know. That person just is plugged. Or another example, how could these people in South America, get into connection with the plants and know what the plant needs or what the plant is going to, how that plant talks to that person. It's because we are really connected. And it's just that we got distracted really very strongly. So we can get back to that connection, but in the case of the Danza Duende Network, we don't really need to talk about it too much because each person could let herself, himself, get there naturally. So what I mean, this person maybe doesn't need to imagine is going to become a great shaman. That's the name, no? Which they actually call shaman, something that is South American, but actually the word shaman comes from Mongolia anyway. So you see things like that, because it's very interesting to remain innocent in your process so that you can let things be, let it be, because the more you can be free from all of these labels, the more you can really get into the nakedness of the core of life. No? What is the core of your essential reason of being here? And it's not intellectual, so that's why it's not very interesting for me to label it, because it reveals itself as you do things. So that's what I mean. As you do a song, or you write a poetry, or you do, and things are going to get out of yourself that are maybe not what you expected, and that's why it's so interesting to remain free in that process. So I think I explained quite okay. This is what I wanted to talk about. So the cycle of the dragon was very organized in the sense of knowing exactly where we go and how we do it. And then whatever happens, it's like a trip in a boat. There's a captain and the person is driving the boat. But of course, the winds depends on what's going to happen during that retreat or that time. Then the 5 elements is this studying of your emotions, of the elements, and the relationship between gross elements with subtle elements, your consciousness, and how you could ride the dragon thanks to the fact that you can see directly in the same time the duality of how you are experiencing the world with hopes and fears and hang-ups, and how in the same time there is something inside of you that is learning very quickly how to release the energy without stopping the energy, the opposite, letting it be, so you surf the energy. So that's thanks to the body. You're using your body for that. So your body becomes the tool for that. And the body is the 5 elements. It's the mandala, the basic one that you have with you. And then, of course, everything we live is a mandala. But your body is the basic nature. So if you're looking for nature, you are the nature yourself. So that's a very important point. And then the cycle of the mysteries comes back really to the direct experience of the fruit of all of that you have been doing. That's why it's more interesting to do it the last one. But you could do these cycles in any order. But let's say that the mystery cycle is more interesting if you did the 2 others, because you get to a point where you can relax about all this complicated emotional patterns and enter into the simplicity of manifestation of the ritual or manifestation of the archetypa. How something comes in you that you didn't expect and that you are engaged in, and that this reveals to you something that has to do with the natural wisdom of human beings on earth. Because just to end my talk, we have a kind of a body and a kind of perceptions, and it's very important, I believe, and I will say that we never forget that what we perceive, what we see, what we hear, what we say, everything that we think is so important and so true is only a playful game of our own perceptions. We have absolutely no idea how much whatever it is we believe in, whatever is it we call history, or whatever it is we call science, religion, we have not a clue how much all of this is not just something that we just fabricated. So at one point the whole thing gets destroyed, and that's where you remain with nothing, and that's where you start each breath and where you stop each breath, and that's where you dance. You're always coming back to that point zero. And that's very nice, because if we understand that, we have an open space to be free from thinking we are so important, or thinking that we are whatever it is that is the opposite of important. But if you're obsessed, and if a human being is obsessed with control and his importance and how great he is, that he could build houses and he could build airplanes and he could go to the moon and all these things, the fact that we really learn from the guts of ourselves that all of this is maybe just only an illusion, and that we come back to the zero, the case zero, that makes us much more able to have fun, to laugh, much more able to try to be respectful, to maybe even we are able to become respectful of people who think different. Maybe we could just let go of judgment, and maybe we can really reach a point where our human condition is very interesting and very, very precious, because it's not anymore trying to sort out the affirmation of its greatness or of its superiority. It's not like that. It's more like a condition in which the cleverness, the sharp cleverness of our own consciousness is able to realize its own self. And there is something that I'm not even able to talk about, because I don't know. And this don't know place is a very knowable place, and it's really nice because you can always refresh, So this is the whole thing is about that. And the whole thing then after is just life, It's just life. You go into life. So you have the morning, maybe your breakfast, maybe your garden, maybe your radio, maybe your children, maybe your mother, maybe your father, maybe your animals, whatever it is. Maybe you have to go and give a show. All these things you can live with all your life as a dance, and then when you're in the dance, you can really live the dance as really the whole of life. So this is what this project is about. And the five wisdom, the mandala of chaos and order of five wisdom, is the place where you can go like reward, like you go in front and behind. It's like you do 4 steps in front and 4 steps backwards. You go on the right and on the left. And this coming and going of energy, it's what makes you become very fluent into knowing yourself. That's the five wisdom is about that. So it's really not something like you would say, this guy is very Padma, he's really filled with fire, he's a fire guy, and this girl is so water because she's so intellectual and she's so this and that. That is a trap, and that trap is really getting lots of people, and I really hope we don't, in the Danza Duende Network, fall in that trap. There is no five wisdoms, there is no such a thing. It is just a way to ride the dragon, and it's a very precious and very, very respectful. It deserves lots of, I would call devotion. It deserves devotion that we are lucky enough to receive these tools and to use them respectfully with a lot of care and a lot of generosity. So thank you very much.